What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Shop Talk Tuesday. So on this episode, we're going to go ahead and get the handle scales shaped for the giveaway knife. Now, what I'm going to do on this one, instead of doing a voiceover, I'm going to be pausing here and there in the process and talking about the things that you need to focus on in those particular steps. Things like don't overheat your pins whenever you're grinding them down or whenever you're focusing on little spots like that, because you might mess up the mechanical bond with the epoxy by overheating the epoxy on accident. There's going to be little things like that that we're going to focus on during this handle shaping, and we're just going to go from there. Now, this handle is super wide right now, and we are going to be removing a lot of this material in the process. So right now, our handle scales are about 1/2 inch thick, and we're going to get them down to almost 1/4 inch thick. Now you might be thinking, well, he's going to have to do a Coke bottle shaped handle because a lot of the handles that are like this are Coke bottle shaped. It'll have some characteristics of a Coke bottle-ish shaped handle, but it's also going to not have some of those. So it's really just going to be contoured, and I'll be doing some things that you would do in a Coke bottle formed handle, but I'm also going to change it up a lot. So that's what we're going to jump into. That's what we're going to do in this video. Y'all just go ahead, sit back, relax, watch, and hopefully learn something. Let's get it. So one of the things that I see a lot whenever I'm watching YouTube videos is people will take their pins and just go into their belt grinder and grind them off pretty quick. And whenever you do that, you run the risk of overheating your epoxy down in that hole in between the pin and the wood. You want to make sure that you do not do that because that's going to mess up your mechanical bond. I like to use on pin material like stainless steel, copper, brass, the more metal type pins. I like to use the porta band saw. But on things like micarta pins, you don't really have to worry about those that much because they're not going to retain a bunch of heat. But the metal pins, these heat up very fast and they will overheat that epoxy. So we want to go ahead, use the porta band saw. But we don't want to go and just start getting after it with this and pushing really hard and cutting through it fast because this porta band saw blade will build up some heat as well. So we just want to go nice and slow, get them cut through, and then go over to the 2x72 and start getting everything squared up to then start shaping. So let's go ahead, let's get these cut out. See, that's still cold to the touch. It's a little bit warm, but it's not anything that's overly hot, and that's not going to end up, overheating that epoxy that's in there. So we got that done. Time to go ahead, square everything up. So what we're going to be using here is a 40 grit belt, and this is a brand new belt. I don't typically use higher grit belts on handle shaping because you have a couple things that happen. The belts start getting hot pretty quick and the material starts getting hot pretty quick, and you risk burning your material. And if you do that, you're then going to have to remove even more material to get past that burned area. So you don't want to do that. Plus, whenever you do a higher grit belt on pin material, it builds up heat in the pins super fast. Whenever you're doing the lower grit belts, you don't risk overheating the epoxy, overheating the wood, all of those things. So that's why I use a lower grit, and I use a new one that has nice fresh grit on it so that we can really get in there, start getting everything taken down, and save ourselves some time. So let's go ahead, throw our mask on, get this thing going. So now that we've used the 2x72 to get our scales and everything all nice and squared up, we want to use the oscillating spindle sander with an 80 grit drum. Now you can also use a small wheel attachment if you have one. I don't, so I'm using my spindle sander. And I'm going to use it to get inside the belly of this and clean everything up. I might go ahead and even use it on some of the outer areas, but I'm going to primarily focus on the belly, get all of that nice and refined so that I can then go back to the 2x72 and start working on the profile of the handle. But we'll end up coming back to here one more time after that to smooth out everything after we shape it on the 2x72 before we go into hand sanding. So let's go ahead and get this thing going with this drum sander. So you can see here, it really starts getting in there and getting everything smoothed out. Because this is still super rough in here from the 40 grit belt, where this is all nice and smoothed out. Even though I'm only using a 80 grit, it still puts in a lot of work to get everything ready and prepped to start hand sanding later on. Seeing we're making sure we don't get too hot. You know, we don't want to get it so hot that it's too hot to touch. So at that point we know we're messing with our epoxy. So just keep checking it as you're going through. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and start profiling this handle on the 2x72 with that 40 grit belt. Now, I've got a lot of material to remove here, and we're going to kind of pull this back in like it is kind of a Coke bottle, but I'm not doing that. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a palm swell. We're going to bring this front end quite a bit, but everything's going to be really contoured. It's not going to be, you know, that straight and then that swoop down in like a typical Coke bottle shape. It's just going to be a nice contoured handle that should feel real comfortable in the hand and be comfortable for a lot of different hand sizes and shapes. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be focusing on making sure we're making it ergonomic the entire time. And what I like to do is about 90% of the profiling on the 2x72, then about, I'm going to say 8% on the oscillating spindle sander, and then that way we've only got about 2% to do by hand. Now the thing that you have to worry about when you're doing this is you cannot put material back on here. Once it's gone, it's gone. So if you're going to do as much work on the 2x72 and the spindle sander as I am, you need to get comfortable with how you're holding yourself so you don't accidentally slip, because once you take all that material off, you don't have much room for error. So you just want to be careful with what you're doing, get comfortable with how the belt takes material away from your material, and then just go slow with it, go gentle with it, and don't try and get too fast and too impatient and you start just getting after it because you're ready for it to be done. Take your time, ease into it. So that's what we're going to do now. So what we're going to do here is, as I'm going through here, I shaped this section, and then I shaped this section to get them to match, and then I shaped either side of the front here to get them matched, and then I just started evening out the belly here. What you don't want to do is you don't want to just hardcore get after one side and then have to try and mirror everything that you did to get this side done. Do it in steps so you're not having to try and figure out how the hell you got this side done and you're just winging it hoping that it ends up working. Do it in steps so that you can easily mirror what you did on either side. So now that we've got the belly kind of tapered how we want it to be, now it's time to go ahead and do the spine, and then what we'll end up doing is flattening the sides and finishing removing material from the outside here. So now that I have the rough profile that I want, I'm going to go in and I'm going to start softening a lot of these edges and then finish that 90% that I was talking about. So I'm just going to start breaking some of these hard edges that you see right here. Start rounding them over a little bit. I'm not going to be going so far that I start getting into the belly here. I'm just going to start bringing it in closer to the belly of the tang, but we're not going to get all up on here. We're going to finish all that stuff with the spindle sander. So now it's just time to start breaking some of these lines, going ahead, getting the butt of the knife contoured a little bit, probably bring this in just a hair. It's already really comfortable, but we just need to start really focusing on ergonomics and making sure it feels great in the hand now. So this is the goal here. We get it about 90% profiled and shaped on the 2x72, and then we finish it out on the spindle sander and hand sanding. So the spindle sander will get inside here and get this all nice and contoured perfectly. Same thing with across here. We'll get this all nice and smoothed out, but I really like the contour of this handle. It is very comfortable. So we're going to go ahead, get this to about 98% on the spindle sander. So this is what we're trying to do right here. Trying to get this nice and rounded. So we still have some jagged edges around here. We're going to get this nice and smoothed in so that when we put our hand around here, it just feels comfortable inside there. So we're just going to keep contouring like that. Okay, so far, what I've already done was 220 grit and 400 grit on this particular handle. I'm going to go ahead and take it up to 600 grit, but one of the things I want to hit on before I do that is whenever I initially start sanding, there's still going to be some scratches going across this and lengthwise on this from both the 2x72 and the oscillating spindle sander. So what I do whenever I first start sanding with something like a 220 grit is I'll actually cross over back and forth. So I'll go across the blade back and forth to end up getting those scratches out that are running parallel to the blade. I used to just go back and forth and it took me forever to get the sanding lines or grinding lines out, but now I cross over, and I just go at like a crosshatch the whole entire time until I get those lines out, and then when I start sanding parallel with everything, it sands out those cross lines and I'm left with a nice smooth steel right here. And that's what you want to be left with so that you get a nice polish on everything whenever you start buffing. Now for me, I'm going to be acid etching all of this, so I wanted to get it nice and sanded, real smooth, so that whenever you go to acid etch, it doesn't intensify any of the grinding lines. That's one of the things that you got to pay attention to, because if you have a little gouge in this or a scratch in this, when you go to acid etch, it's going to make that stand out. So you just want to get it all nice and smooth. You also want to focus on sanding with a backer or something whenever you're going over this area. So I use something like this little pad right here, or something that's cylindrical like this right here, so that whenever I'm sanding over this, I'm not risking sanding the wood faster than the steel. I've got something that's bridging that gap the whole entire time. And I do that whenever I'm working with the 220 and then part of the 400. Whenever you start getting up to something like 600 grit, you can go ahead and just start using your finger to get in there, because this isn't going to take off enough material to really hurt anything. But if you're using that heavier grit, you're going to end up grinding or sanding down the wood faster than the steel, and you're going to have a weird lip where everything meets. Same thing with the pins. You can make it to where the pins stand out above the wood, and it's uncomfortable when you're holding it. But at this point, we're going to go ahead, start sanding with our 600 grit, and just get everything finalized. Alright, so now that we have sanded everything and got the desired finish that we want on it, it's time to go ahead and buff this. Now, I am going to be using a green compound with a fine wheel. I'll tell you, I use anything from the green compound to a gray compound. I don't really use many of like the other colors, the whites, the pinks, or anything like that. Typically use gray and green, and this is going to be a green compound that I'm going to use on this. Now, even though I'm going to acid etch the spine and the belly and everything that's right here, I'm still going to buff everything prior to that, and then I'll go back and acid etch all of this. But now it's time to go ahead and buff this. You do want to be careful. This is going to be spinning really fast, and let's say you accidentally caught it some weird way, it can flick this into you. So you just want to be real careful whenever you're dealing with something that's spinning at a high RPM like this, that is kind of grabby and everything. You want to make sure that you're just being careful. And I'm going to go ahead, kick this on. It's on its highest speed right now, so we're going to get the buffing. So that right there is the finish with just a little bit of buffing. So we went from that dull finish to that right there. Now, some woods I do something like a boiled linseed oil or something like that. But for a lot of these stabilized woods, I just go straight to buffing them and leave it at that. And I mean, that just leaves an absolute awesome finish on this. I really like those scales. But we're going to go ahead and pop up over here and we'll finish out this video. Well, let's go ahead and end this right here with a little bit of that. So what do y'all think about that? I absolutely love the way these handle scales turned out. The contour on it is probably one of my favorite contours that I've ever done when it comes just strictly to comfort and everything. We've got a nice, like, intense contour or whatever you want to call it, curve going through here. So it really locks into your hand. And that thing is just awesome. And I think the overall package is just beautiful. Now, I want to get y'all's opinion on something here. As I was buffing everything, I started looking at it and I thought, man, it looks really good with that polished spine. Now it's not, I mean, it's pretty close to a mirror finish, but I've got it almost like a satin finish, but it's just real sleek looking. And I really like the way that this turned out. So my question is, do y'all think that I should go ahead and acid etch this section, or do you think I should leave it polished like that? I kind of like it etched because it shows off all of the acid etching that we have going on the blade. It kind of frames the bevels and the flats and everything that we have going on here. And I think that it looks really cool with that contrast going up there. And then whenever we do our edge is also going to be the same finish as the spine here. So I want to know what y'all think. Should I do that? Should I not do that? I'm going to give y'all until next Shop Talk Tuesday to comment down below. Tell me whether I should acid etch the spine or not. And one of the other things that you actually see now is that distal taper that goes from the butt all the way through to the tip. It's subtle, but it goes all the way there. You know, my bevels only start in this little area right here, and that comes all the way down, starting about right here, and tapers all the way to the tip. So that was fun to forge and everything, and I absolutely just love this. Like I said, it is perfect in the hand. You are not going to lose this no matter what you're doing. It is crazy. So really excited about this. But yeah, y'all let me know. Acid etch the spine. Leave it like it is. What do you think? Down in the comment section. But guys, that's the end of this one. Remember, 20,000 subscribers. We're doing the giveaway for this. That's not far away. We might even hit it before we actually do the video where we sharpen this, and then I tell you how to enter on the giveaway. So that's going to be next video. It'll be finishing this knife, going ahead, putting an edge on it, maybe cutting some stuff with it, and then telling you how to enter for a chance to win this knife. Guys, if y'all would, give this video a thumbs up, share this video, or one of my other videos. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. 20,000 subscribers, giving away a knife. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for spending y'all's time with me. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time.